So characteristics of stack defense hot and fire zone blitzes. These are 5 and 6 man field blitzes out of cover 3 and 6 that allow for more aggressive attacking schemes without fear of giving up big plays. Now, some of these things I'm going to talk about in greater detail later on, but I might stop every now and then just to clarify some things so you don't have to try to figure it out as we make our way through. So we call cover 6. Cover 6 to us is our quarters covered. So we'll play cover 3 as default in a balanced formation, but if we get into a trips type of situation, we really like to play quarter halves as opposed to just straight cover 3. So, of course, that's a philosophical conversation with whatever you're comfortable with. But as we make our way through some of the trips alignments, I just want to make you aware of that so it makes a little more sense. We call them according to boundary, middle, and field. They're combinations of same side players and line movement to break down one part of the offensive formation. So when we align a formation, we generally have our strong side players and weak side players on opposite sides, but they line up the same way each time. I'm probably telling you something you already know. But we thought for us it makes it really simple to call these blitzes according to field. That way the calls apply to the same players almost every time. So it makes it a little easier to remember and to execute as well. I'm a big fan of mnemonics. I think it's really important for learning and teaching and understanding. So we try to stick to those things as much as possible. Simplifies things a little bit, maybe oversimplifies them sometimes, but I think in the end you're better off that way. They are non-rotational post-snap movements that can be used in a run or pass situation. Now I say this because many teams who use hot and fire zone blitzes do it from their too high look, and then they'll rotate to a single high coverage post-snap. Now we do that as well at Clovis High School where I am now. I decided for the sake of our presentation tonight to start them static from a single high look, just to simplify what we're doing. As we go through this, you'll start to understand, and you may even use some of these now, that the rotational aspect of it is really, really important for disguise. But the other thing it does is when you use the rotational aspect with the too high look, it really gives you more of an okie front down low. So it kind of changes the front a little bit. So I purposely avoided that to stick to a true stack alignment and work it from a static cover 3. Number 4, a hot blitz utilizes 5 rushers and 3 under, 3 over coverage. A fire blitz uses 6 rushers and a 2 under, 3 over coverage. Number 6, they do not make use of a defensive lineman dropping into pass coverage. That might be new to some of you. I know it's really popular in different programs, but I was a defensive line coach for many, many, many years, and I was just never particularly fond of dropping a defensive lineman in a pass coverage because that's not what they do. It would be somewhat akin to taking a linebacker or a strong safety and having them rush the passer quite frequently and expecting them to be really good at it. Does it happen sometimes? Yeah, it does, of course. But I think by and large, you want down guys to play down, you want up guys to play up, and it's better if it's left alone, in my opinion. Number 7, they alleviate the need for man coverages that might create mismatches. I know one of the biggest concerns in high school football seemingly every year with all the defensive coaches I talk to is whether or not they have the guys to play man coverage, because obviously speed physical mismatches are no good in the secondary because those are recipes for disaster. So oftentimes I think our man coverage and the quantity of man coverage we play is really dictated on whether or not we have kids that can run. That's not real helpful if you're trying to create an effective an effective blitz scheme, because then it's really hard to bring pressure if you don't have guys that can play man coverage and hold up. So this allows you to get the best of both worlds. If you've got some kids who might be okay in zone coverage and a few kids that might be able to run, you can mix and match and do a lot of different things. But this really helps simplify it, I think. Number 8, really emphasizes pressure. Everyone has to play with their hair on fire. We're bringing 5 and 6. 6 is a little more dynamic than bringing 5. With 5, you really have to emphasize hustle and pressure and playing with a lot of intensity, because we really have to get after the quarterback, as we'll go into some of the
Coach, we have our first question.
Sure.
Do you call your secondary calls, or is it based out of the offensive formation? If you call and check, do you ever have a call that tells your players to stay in the defensive coverage you called?
We generally have a check for everything we call. We make our coverage based on our coverage usually based on formation, down and distance. We have something for both, of course, but we have auto checks that we'll get to If we call, for instance, we call our base coverage and they come out in trips, there's a particular coverage we want to play against trips, we'll have auto checks. A lot of times what we'll do when I signal in the defense is I'll signal in a coverage and then a check coverage. So if the base coverage, for instance, is quarters, is our blue quarters, we call it, if they come out in trips, that week, if we want to play a unique trips coverage based on a particular area of the field or formation, we'll have that check built in. Number 9, I hope that answers your question. Number 9, make your defense your defense. And I think this is really important because oftentimes we like to collaborate with other coaches and beg, borrow, and steal information and all kinds of different tidbits. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is that whatever you use, that you use comfortably, that you make your own and try to use your terminology and your philosophy as much as possible, because in the end, it's going to come down to who does it best, and you're the one doing it, so it might as well be you. All right, some terms to know before we get started. Scuff, seam, curl, flat. Now, some of you may have been with me back in May when I did a presentation on Cover 3 match zone coverage. Some of these concepts are taken from that presentation, not all of them, of course, because there's not enough time, but I try to utilize the ones that I think that are most helpful with what we're going to talk about today. Hole is the middle of formation or inside of number 3, 6 to 8 yards deep. We'll get to more of that in just a little bit. Peel means the defensive end or the edge player peels off to man any running back swing or scat. Poach means the scuff player hanging in the seam or the curl is going to be 8 to 10 yards deep. He's going to be inside of number 2 or number 3 to poach a hot route. If number 2 is a running back, he can hang outside because he already has good leverage. Number 5, overlap. That's when a corner plays on top of number 2 when the quarterback looks away. So just to kind of explain that, if we're in double twins and when we call our zone, our fire zone blitzes, everybody's got their eyes on the quarterback. If the quarterback looks away to throw to the number 2 or the number 1 or anybody in the other direction, I can come over and I can overlap on number 2 because the chances of that quarterback coming back to throw to the backside number 1 are very, very slim. The pressure's going to be on him very quickly. At least that's what we anticipate. And that's going to be almost impossible. So that's what overlap means. Banana, that's the term we use to tell our safety to work downhill, inside out on all run plays. We tell them all the time, run the banana, run the banana, run the banana. So if you can imagine, it really looks like that. It's downhill, inside out, bend to play to the ball. Boss, number 7, boss, that's a term we tell our linebackers to bounce over strong versus trips open, which we'll get to in a few minutes, and I'll show you an example of that. Retreat is a term we use that tells our inside blitzing linebacker in fire, he will drop or retreat to the hole if he gets stonewalled on a blitz. So our A-gap blitzer, what we tell him in fire especially because we're bringing 3, if you're a linebacker or a strong safety, generally it's a linebacker, and you're blitzing down inside into the A-gap, if you're the A-gap player, if you get stonewalled, if a guard comes over and sets on you or he gets center help and you get double teamed, if you cannot press vertically anymore, you're going to drop right back to the hole. You're going to retreat from that block. There's nothing that makes me more frustrated is to see a blitzer come from the second level and get stonewalled at the line of scrimmage by a bigger, stronger player and stand there and just kind of push on each other with the blitzer trying to look over the offensive lineman's shoulder to see where the ball is. That doesn't do anybody any good. I'd rather have him retreat to space and play anything that might come off late. And number 9, a long stick. That's a post-snap horizontal movement of a defensive lineman 2 gaps away from his pre-snap alignment. So we'll see some examples of that as well. So those are just some terms to know as we make our way through the presentation. Okay, so the first thing we'll do with our back end guys is teach them landmarks. They have to know the landmarks on the field. We used to be a spot drop zone team. We got away from that last year because it just became way too easy for quarterbacks to determine where we were going to be when the ball was snapped, and all they do is throw the ball where we aren't. And it was very frustrating. So we became a pattern match team, but it's still important, I think, to teach your players where those different parts of the field are. You know, it's one thing to tell a kid, well, you got to go to the curl and you got to go to the high flat or the low flat. But to a lot of those kids, they have no idea what that means. So we literally take cones out on the field and put them in those spots on the field so they can see exactly what that means. Because the interesting thing about cover 3, I think, is in the middle of the field against a balanced formation, cover 3 is fabulous. It can be really effective versus the run or the passing game. Where cover 3 gets a little dicey is when you get on the hash mark or you get an unbalanced formation, where you get some type of trips formation or a quads formation. And double twins or a balanced formation in the middle of the field is fabulous. But once you get out of those two constants, it's not so easy to teach. So you have to spend a lot of time to do it right. So we take kids out on the field, we put cones down, and we show them where each of these places are: the low hole, the seam curl, the high flat, the low flat, and then the middle and outside deep thirds. A position technique. So for the corners, we align 7 to 9 yards off on top of number 1 for the deep outside third. 2 by 8 inside of number 1 versus twins or trips, and the deep outside third. So the corners will have the deep outside third all the time, unless, of course, we get trips, and we like to play quarters. So the single side he'll play the outside half. Okay. The other thing that can be really helpful for this, if you are a man team when you play any cover 1, is to utilize some press bail and some bait with this. So you can try to give the quarterback a different pre-snap look and maybe change up some of the things the offense is trying to do at the line of scrimmage. So you can use some press bail. Everybody's got their eyes on the quarterback as a corner. If the quarterback looks away from me, I'm going to overlap on number 2 if it's double twins. We talked about that a little bit earlier. If he looks to me, I'm going to get all of number 1 right now. If he looks away, let's go back to that first part. If the quarterback looks away, overlap on number 2. This is really critical, because what will happen is if you don't have inside linebacker help or any kind of linebacker help based on the blitz that's occurring, it's going to be an easy hot throw to number 2. So the corner, by overlap, what that means is the corner is able to help out over the top in case the poach player doesn't get there in time. So that's where that concept comes in and can be really helpful. The key is the contain player versus run 2, and the touchdown saver versus run away. And he'll play quarters on the front side of trips and halves on the back side. Linebackers and strong safeties, they're in their normal alignment to formation. The one thing we'll do with the strong safety is we generally play our strong safeties outside shade in double twins or any kind of alignment because they are the force player. But when we have any kind of fire or hot zone blitz, we'll play them head up, because what we want with them to be able to do in their poach technique is to be able to play inside. We want to be able to jump inside if the quarterback rises up to throw hot. By alignment, we're hoping we can take that away. If we're lined up outside shade, we're never going to get there, and that throw can become really easy for the quarterback. So we'll adjust our alignment when we do call our hot and fire zone blitzes. They must know the hole player is in hot, and they have to know there's no hole player in fire because of ring and 6. So there's no hole player. We'll have 2 poach players, and that'll be it. Now we may get a hole player late. If the A-gap rusher gets stonewalled, then he's going to drop out in our retreat technique we talked about earlier. Seam players use poach technique. Read the quarterback and feel receivers. So once again, if the quarterback looks away for the linebackers and strong safeties, I'm going to shuffle in that direction and just kind of hold, because I may not have anybody to cover down on like the corner does with the number 2. If the quarterback looks to me, I'm going to hold and hunt. So what that means is based on my leverage, I'm going to try to be inside, but I'm not going to move. I'm going to hold. If he's looking at me, and I'm going to try to hunt up the receiver near me, because based on my alignment and technique, I should be in a poach position to take away a hot throw. We don't reroute. We want to stay underneath routes. The problem with rerouting sometimes is if you don't get a good reroute, you end up with bad leverage on a receiver, and we don't want that. We're a force player versus a run, and we're going to push the ball to the free safety in the middle of the field. We're going to work to stay inside of number 2 or 3. The free safety is going to line at 12 yards, splitting number 1 receivers, and he's going to walk out. In double twins, we're going to have him walk out. We don't backpedal out right away. We walk out. I like that because I think it helps the free safety fit in the running game a little better, and I think it also allows him a little bit more time to read based on run or pass and what he sees from the quarterback. When we're in trips, he'll line 12 by 1 outside of number 3 and pedal out. Now we want him to pedal out because his coverage responsibilities are a little different. He reads the quarterback. Quarterback looks away. He's going to push to number 2 in that direction, staying inside the seam. The quarterback looks to him. He's going to hold the middle and play the ball. So if we're in double twins and the quarterback's looking right down the middle, he's obviously got to hold the middle, and he's just going to play the ball. He's going to feel what's going on. Most importantly, we want him to stay on top and pick the ball. He is the deepest defender. So ideally, he should be on top of anything deep. And we really want to emphasize getting the ball back, especially from him. He's in the best position to do that. Run the banana and spill the ball to seam defenders versus run, and play inside quarter on the front side of trips. All right, so in our base alignment, this is where our perimeter alignment looks like with our bandit, our rover, our corner, and our free. Our bandit, rover, head up, 5 yards off, head up. Our corners are, 2x8 inside and number 1, and they have the deep outside third. We sometimes we even play them 1x7. They don't have to be too deep. It really depends on, I think, how athletic your corners are, what they feel comfortable with. And our box alignment looks like this. Our ends and tackles, we call our strong side end the end, and our weak side end is the tackle. So we can utilize those names when we want to make calls and try to package things together. Our Sam backer is our strong side backer. Our Will backer is our weak side backer. So when you look at that, basically all 6 of those players are working in tandem. So the Sam and the end work together as a tandem. The Mike and the nose work together as a tandem. And the Will and the tackle work together as a tandem. They have to really work hard to make each other right. Our base alignment will look something like this. We're lined up in double twins. This is what we would have. The bandit and rover now in our fire and hot zone blitzes, of course, would be head up. They're a little wider here, but I didn't make that change. This is what it would look like. The other thing we teach kids, and when our coverage concepts is, everybody has to understand what the numbered receivers are and how those numbered receivers fit into our coverage concepts. Obviously, the first receiver outside is number 1. The second one is number 2. And then the third receiver inside is number 3. In this case, it'd be the running back. So in our coverage concepts, we play a lot of quarters. We know that our corners have to read number 1. Our bandit rover have to read number 2. And the inside backers read number 3. And they have rules based on what those numbered receivers do, which is actually a great topic for another day. All right, and then versus trips will look like this. We have the free safety outside of number 3. We have the bandit head up. We have the Sam. What we try to do is apex the Sam over number 3 and the tackle. What we say is if number 3 gets wider than 5 yards, we're going to come down and split the difference. We really would like to not go any farther than 3 yards outside the tackle with our Sam backer, because once he starts going out there with number 3, the box can really get displaced. What we'll do sometimes is if we want to go ahead and widen out and play that, what we'll do is we'll give what we call a buddy call to our defensive end. And what that tells the defensive end now, he's now going to be a cross-face B-gap player, and the Sam will fit the C-gap if he gets run to him. That kind of helps shore up makes our box a little stronger versus the run game. All right, so we make our calls match personnel based on field position, knowing our bandit and Sam will always be to the field. Now, that's how we cover down in our defense. Our bandit and our Sam always go to the field, and our rover and Will always go to the boundary. We call that the weak side. This helps simplify calls and keep us from having to check blitzes. So our hot 5-man, the boundary is called Ram, which is the rover and Mike. The middle of the field, hot man, we call cross, which is the Sam, Mike, or Will based on running back alignment with a Liz or rip call. You can do this however you choose to do it. If it's in double twins and you're in the middle of the field, you can make your call to the running back. You can make it away from the running back. It really depends on maybe how you want to attack a protection scheme. And then the field we call mob. So what we try to do is, you can tell, other than cross, we try to make our calls and our terms, we try to make them mirror the positions that are being utilized in that particular call. I think it helps kids remember what they're doing a little easier. Fire is our 6-man stuff, our 6-man blitzes. Our boundary we call smear. That's the Sam, Mike, and Rover. And the middle is our crossfire. That will incorporate all 3 linebackers. And then to the field, we call it womb, which is Will, Mike, and Bandit. And then one of the things that, as most of you know, one of the most difficult things about making signals and calls, or calls and signals, is coming up with a term that you can actually demonstrate with your hands or your feet or your body to send to the kids on the field. Sometimes that can be really challenging. So that hence the reason I'm telling you that is because I would struggle with coming up with a word for our 6-man field blitz, and I came up with the womb because it includes all 3 of those. And if you guys have something better, by all means, let me know.